prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. My God will never fail. 'Cause I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. And every war he wages, he will win. And I'm not backing down from any giants. 'Cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. 'Cause I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. 'Cause I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. 'Cause I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven, spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross is spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me.
Welcome to New Hope, and thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning, and happy Mother's Day to all the amazing mothers out there. We honestly and obviously wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for all that you do, and I hope that even in the midst of this pandemic, you get to spend time with your kids and have a special and amazing day. I want to give a quick special shout out to my amazing wife, who obviously is the mother of my children and who just gave birth to our fifth child, little Capri Leal. It's been amazing to finally hold her and meet her, but I did not think that we would be in this type of situation. And when we think about this collectively, about the current pandemic, many questions arise. With those questions comes worry, and worry about right now and what tomorrow's going to bring. And honestly, Katie and I have worried about this exact moment. Having a baby in the middle of a virus. What does the hospital look like is the question we asked. Or will we be surrounded by chaos? Could we get the virus just being there? Many questions arise, and of course the biggest worry was this: what happens to the baby, and will the baby be safe? I've had many conversations recently about these types of things and the future. What does it look like, and when do we get to go back to church together in the same building? Trust me, I'm asking the same exact questions, but as we think about these questions, we don't really have answers. So it instills fear and it instills worry. Now, if you're a worrier, you totally understand how much worry controls your life in the midst of darkness, in the midst of the unknown. And honestly, it's totally understandable. But I want to point you to a verse that I absolutely hold on to and think of often, especially in the middle of these types of times. Matthew 6, verse 34, it says this: "Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today." To give some context on this verse, Jesus is speaking to a multitude of people in these chapters. And what he's doing is he's giving an amazing sermon that we call the Sermon on the Mount. And as he's speaking to these people, he brings up topic after topic, and he's teaching them about anger, adultery, the law, love for enemies, and so on. He then gets to the end of these teaching moments, and he lands on money and possessions. So as he talks to them about money and their stuff, he ends that topic with this verse, saying, "Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries." I find this amazing because right now, many have lost their jobs or working less hours because of this pandemic. The minute we lose our job, what's the first thing we worry about? Finances, money. Why? Because that's what pays our bills. So without the thing that helps us pay our bills, we worry about how we're going to pay them, right? How will we survive? And then we think of our stuff. If we can't pay our bills, then our stuff has to go. So what is Jesus saying not to worry about? Money and possessions. Interesting, right? He says not to worry because he is in control of it, and is asking us to trust him instead of ourselves. Trust that he has a plan, and that our plan, though incredibly amazing because we made it and therefore think it's amazing, is really not that great. His is completely better. And from my own life, I can tell you that that's exactly and absolutely true. So why talk about worry? Because Habakkuk has been worried this whole entire time. Worried about what will happen to him and his people, and worried that God wouldn't show up. If you were with us last week, we learned that God will show up just in his timing. Habakkuk will respond to God's response in this chapter that we're going to read today, but he is a perfect example of what not worrying looks like in the midst of a storm or uncertainty. In Habakkuk chapter 3, starting in verse 1, it says this: "This prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk." So let's pause here for 1 second and see what this is saying. It says this prayer, he sung it. Total change of mindset and heart from the previous chapters, right? What God spoke on chapter 2 really stuck in his heart, and he understood that God is in control. Let's keep reading. Verse 2. "I have heard all about you, Lord. I am filled with awe by your amazing works. In this time of our deep need, help us again as you did years gone by, and in your anger, remember your mercy. I love that Habakkuk remembers the past and remembers that God has done so much for his people. He says, in this time of need, help us again as you did before. This is huge because it humbles us in these moments when we feel like God isn't moving or that God isn't there. Did he ever let us down before? Did he ever leave us before? No, of course not. So remind yourself of this exact moment. He never left you before and he won't do it now. Verse 3. I see God moving across the deserts from Edom, the Holy One coming from Mount Paran. His brilliance, splendor fills the heavens, and the earth is filled with praise. His coming is as brilliant as the sunrise. Rays of light flash from his hands where his awesome power is hidden. Pestilence marches before him. Plague follows close behind. When he stops, the earth shakes. When he looks, the nations tremble. He shatters the everlasting mountains and levels the eternal hills. He is the eternal one. I see the people of Cushan in distress and the nation of Midian tremble in terror. Was it in anger, Lord, that you struck the rivers and parted the sea? Were you displeased with them? No, you were sending your chariots of salvation. Habakkuk is bringing up amazing things that God has done. This last verse, when he's talking about the chariots of salvation, he's talking about Pharaoh's army being crushed in the water during the parting of the Red Sea, speaking to God, taking care of them. He's rejoicing in these things as he remembers them because it gives hope. Reminding himself of God's almighty power and miraculous signs and wonders because those things give hope that God can and will do it again. It's in these times that we can rejoice even more because it's a time where God can show off. Honestly, I want him to. I want to rejoice in the middle of darkness and chaos because I know the outcome will be absolutely incredible. And at the end of it, we can only say one thing, that all the glory and praise goes to Jesus. See, the Bible is full of miracles, full of mercies, full of grace, full of wonders. But they aren't just stuck in the pages of our Bibles. These things exist today and exist now. God is not done. He will still move mountains. He will still continue to part Red Seas. But oftentimes, it takes a pandemic for us to look up, pray like we've never prayed before, and rejoice like there's no tomorrow for Red Seas to part. Because when life gets good again, we oftentimes don't feel the need for God as much in our lives, if we're honest. We must learn to rejoice. We must learn to be prayerful. We must learn to give thanks in every situation. Let's keep reading in verse 9. You brandished your bow and your quiver of arrows. You split open the earth with flowing rivers. The mountains watched and trembled. Onward swept the raging waters. The mighty deep cried out, lifting its hands to the Lord. The sun and moon stood still in the sky as your brilliant arrows flew and your glittering spear flashed. You marched across the land in anger and trampled the nations in your fury. You went out to rescue your chosen people, to save your anointed ones. You crushed the heads of the wicked and striped their bones from head to toe. With his own weapons, you destroyed the chief of those who rushed out like a whirlwind, thinking Israel would be easy prey. You trampled the sea with your horses and the mighty waters piled high. All these words pointing to Israel and how God has taken care of them. That's what he's speaking on. Huge switch from the past chapters, right? Habakkuk is once again crying out to God, but if you remember, it says he sung these words. What is he doing? He's rejoicing. Continuing in verse 16. I trembled inside when I heard this. My lips quivered with fear. My legs gave way beneath me, and I shook in terror. I will wait quietly for the coming day when disaster will strike the people who invade us. Even though the fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me a sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. This ending is absolutely beautiful for the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk is now realizing that it doesn't matter what the circumstance is, he can always be rejoicing because God is his strength. At the beginning of the book, we see him wrestling with God and truly confused and upset and angry. Yet the story ends with Habakkuk able to rest in the ways of God and trust God no matter what circumstance may transpire. He gets to a place where his worship of God is not contingent on his circumstance. I'm going to repeat that for those in the back, or in this case, maybe another room. His worship, or better said, our worship of God should never be contingent upon our circumstances. I know it's easier to worship when things are amazing, but we need to, just like Habakkuk, come to a place where even in trials and distress continue, even when those things continue, we will choose to rejoice in the Lord. Paul encourages us to come to this place in Philippians 4, verse 4. It says this, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Not sometimes, not when things are just good. He says always. The reality is that life can be so brutal at times. And Jesus knows this, and he said these words to his disciples. I've said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. John 16:33. This is so key because it's clear that even as a Christian, we aren't exempt from hardships and suffering. We aren't immune to these things. It can be extremely challenging and at times seem nearly impossible. But God wants to bring us all to a place where we also are able to worship God and choose to rejoice in him even in the midst of the darkest storms. Many people are devastated when their prayers aren't answered. Their grief usually turns to disappointments, bitterness, even anger. But remember this, we must believe in God more than we believe for the miracles. I want to share an incredible story that we find in Daniel chapter 3. If you've grown up in church, you know this, the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and their refusal to bow down and worship King Nebuchadnezzar's golden idol. As a kid, again, who grew up in church, you hear about the story and are amazed, and I still am, about what takes place. They get thrown into a fiery furnace, but they don't get burned. And of course, everyone is blown away as they see not only 3 in there, but 4. Literally Jesus with them. The point of the story is usually the fact that they are in the fiery furnace, but they don't get burned. Amazing miracle. And we could spend hours on just that. But I want us to hear what they said to the king in Daniel chapter 3, verse 16. It says this, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of the hand, O king. But if not, listen to that, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods of worship, the golden image that you have set up. See, these 3 young Hebrew dudes were confident that God was able to deliver them from the fire. Yet they also declared that if God chose not to rescue them, they would not allow their circumstances to change their worship of him. Wow. Amazing, right? Pete Greig says this from his book, God on Mute. In the first part of their speech, we see that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have faith for the miracle. And this is impressive. But then we see that they also have faith of a deeper kind altogether. Faith to endure suffering should the miracle not happen. See, they prove that we can not only rejoice in any situation, but also proves this, that we can suffer well. Not everything we go through is a glory story where every piece is beautiful and absolutely perfect. There are stories of hardship and devastation that prove deep faith in Jesus when it's so easy in that moment to say no to him. We need these stories in our lives to grow us deep in our relationship with him. Although Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had faith for the miracle, they sought to live out a deeper faith in letting God do his will, even if it meant them to burn in the furnace. I can't even wrap my head around this. They had faith, and not even a fiery furnace of death was going to stop them from rejoicing and giving praise to the true King, Jesus. Habakkuk now is doing the same exact thing. After sharing his heart, his disappointments, his anger, he hears God clearly and says, "All right, Lord, you got this. You're in control of it, and I will rejoice in whatever you have for me and our people." Paul gives us 3 great principles that we can abide in every single day. In 1 Thessalonians 5:16, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. First, we can, like Habakkuk, choose to rejoice in who God is despite our circumstances. Second, we can pray and pour out our heart and soul to God. We see him do this. Third, we can cultivate an attitude of gratitude in our lives. The ending of Habakkuk is amazing, and I want to end with the statement that J. Ronald Blue said about Habakkuk that I 100% agree with. Habakkuk's book begins with an interrogation of God, but ends as an intercession to God. Worry transforms into worship, fear turns into faith, terror becomes trust, hang-ups are resolved with hope, anguish melts into adoration, and what begins with a question mark ends in an exclamation point. We can rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in all of our circumstances, because we know that in whatever situation we find ourselves in, it's the will of God for our lives, and his will is completely perfect. I hope this encouraged you this morning. And for all you mothers out there, again, happy Mother's Day. Can't wait to see you next week. God bless.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Oh, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.